To share it with you or to share it with who would be the question.
Depending on who you are.
If I knew you were trustworthy, I think I would. Yeah, I think I would do that.
I think I would take the offer. They already know my location now. I don't get any money for it.
There is not as much control over, I trust you, therefore I'm going to give you my data, as we might like to think. And I think we need to have way more conversations around what we think is right. And that's really where sort of geoethics comes in.
Where I live.
Where I live,
Where I live,
what kind of work I do.
where I go to work.
Work, school, my home place.
You would probably know where I do my shopping,
Where I go to the supermarket.
what kind of sports I practice.
Where I go in my free time.
My habits and what I do.
My daily routine, probably. My weekly routine even.
This way they could also figure out who I am.
The kind of person I am.
I think you could figure out where my parents live, where my friends live, where my boyfriend lives.
Who are the people I work with or hang around with?
I think you could figure out probably a lot.
A few of them also pointed to the fact that there is also so-called network effects, right? By knowing something about you, there's also certain assumptions that are being made about people like you who have similar patterns, be that location patterns or consumption patterns or other things. And that, I think, is also something that we sort of need to keep in mind, this idea that we might be sort of thinking, okay, how can I protect me? But quite often it's not just about me. It's quite often about a larger sort of community around me that is defined not necessarily by categories, but more and more by profiles.
So what could be tangible risk for a profiled group?
That you get politically persecuted. That might be one of them. That's the sort of most extreme one. So for example, you might have a particular type of group that at the time is absolutely and utterly not a problem, but through various different political developments, all of a sudden they become the target of more and more sort of persecution and negative animosities towards them. I think all of us can link to various examples in the recent sort of media landscape of groups that, like a few years ago, we would have said, hey, we're welcoming you, we're celebrating you. And nowadays, many of them fear for being attacked on a day-to-day basis. And there's this sort of very much in-your-face one of a negative impact. If the data you have available to you allows you to figure out where these groups meet, how these groups get together, and what their day-to-day patterns are in the spatial terms, right?
I still kind of trust that they're only after my money.
If they want to sell something, they can target their product based on my demographics, so my age, my gender, my location.
I think advertising is the most harmless risk, but if the excuse of doing it for advertising could be given, then I think you don't know where the line could be drawn.
Whether you're walking past a particular sort of animated advertising board, in some areas, because there's more people of that particular profile, they may put up a different advert than people with a different profile in another place. So in some ways that might not necessarily be so problematic, but the moment that there's any kind of political dynamic to that and a way of trying to convince you to vote, say, one way or the other, and we have this really stark spatial split between this group and the other, I think it really becomes a thing where we need to think about, is this something we want? And do we want this to be as easy as it is at the moment? And there's more examples of the kinds of social impacts of profiles that they can build from this data. For example, that you get given access to worse services, that you are targeted more in ways that you don't know about, that the way that social support is offered to you is different from other groups. I mean, we had the scandal in the Dutch context around the sort of social support money that's being paid out and not necessarily equally to people. And location data plays a role in that, right? And also in the profiling of who is deserving and non-deserving. And that is something that we're getting towards more and more sort of openness around what kinds of algorithms or how decisions are being made. But for many things, it can also still remain quite obscure and very difficult for people to trace and, importantly, to contest, to say, hey, this thing is putting me in a position where I am unfairly disadvantaged. What can I do about it? We don't have very good processes in place at the moment to actually help us move ahead with that. That's something that we have learned from the scandals that we've had. There was a lot of people ringing the alarm bell. Listen, something here is wrong. But it took a very, very long time before people were able to pinpoint that it was indeed a system or an algorithmic decision that was behind why people were systematically being treated wrongly. And that is definitely also something that we need to work on. That is, if there is the moment that we're realizing a system isn't actually working for everyone, that we also can do something about that, and we can do something about that regardless of whether we were the ones participating in the design of it or not. So I feel that there's a lot of work to be done there as well.